Success in the NFL is all about timing. And the month of December has a knack for separating the men from the boys. And one of those teams lingering out there right now that I firmly believe is one of the real ones is the Houston Texans. They're going to win the AFC South. And I'm going to explain why in this video. If you're new here, please subscribe to The Air with Brian Gregoire. We talk about the NFL, college football, and college basketball from a business standpoint. So if that's something that you're interested in, hit that subscribe button. We would love to have you be part of this community. We're building this thing brick by brick. You can see this thing coming from a mile away. It's inevitable. The Texans are going to win the AFC South. I mean, the script is written. If you go back to 2023, look at the Buffalo Bills season. There was one point where they were 3 games behind the Miami Dolphins, and they had a mere 8% chance to go to the playoffs, let alone win the division. Well, if you looked at their FPI and their capabilities, talent level as a team, and compared it to the Miami Dolphins, and then looked at their respective schedules, you would see that it was very clear that the Bills were going to win that division because they're going to go on a run, they're going to build momentum, and the Miami Dolphins were going to hit a wall and sputter. And then they played each other on Week 18 for the division. What happens? The Buffalo Bills won the damn thing. They won the AFC East. And I can see the same thing happening with the Houston Texans here. The timing is just right for this Texans squad. They are the best team in their division, like it or not. They have the best team from top to bottom. They have the best head coach in the AFC South. They have the best quarterback in the AFC South. And so it just all adds up. The Texans are a team that started this season 0-3. And as you all know statistically, teams that start 0-3 don't necessarily have the best reputation and the best chance for making the playoffs. Their season usually down spirals. It usually spells doomsday, but not for these resilient Houston Texans. At one point, the Texans lost C.J. Stroud for 4 games. The Texans went 4-0 in that stretch. They now sit at 7-5. They're only 1 game behind the Colts and the Jags, who are tied for first place in the AFC South. And the Texans are the first team out of the playoffs, the first team in the hunt in the AFC. They're right behind the Bills. So they are positioned perfectly to make a run here and not only jump into the playoff picture, but win the division. I mean, the writing is on the wall here. And I think it's a huge testament to this team that with C.J. Stroud going down, they don't lose their identity. They don't lose who they are as a team. I mean, that can have multiple effects on a team when you lose your starting quarterback, especially one as good as C.J. Stroud's. You can down spiral. You can regress. You can forget who you are as a team. Or you can dive in even more and lean into your strengths. And that's exactly what the Texans did. And Davis Mills was a great backup. That's why it's important in the NFL to have a workable backup, to have a manageable backup, a backup that can win you games. It goes a long way. Some teams prioritize it, some don't. But Davis Mills is a competent backup who can win you a couple games, and he didn't lose any in this stretch. And so it says a lot about this Texans team that they didn't lose a game with Davis Mills. Now, I know that there's some people in the Texans fan base that believe that he should be starting over C.J. Stroud. I'm not going to go that far, but I will give Davis Mills his flowers when it comes to keeping this Texans team afloat. But it was major for this Texans team to not lose a game in that stretch without C.J. Stroud. And it's a testament to the Texans' character as a team. And speaking of character, there's 3 questions that I ask about teams in the NFL at this time of season. Number 1, how good is your head coach quarterback duo? Number 2, how good is your defense? And number 3, what does your schedule look like for the remainder of the season? Well, for starters, I think that D'Amico Ryans and C.J. Stroud is one of the best head coaching quarterback duos in the NFL. D'Amico Ryans is a motivator of men. There are few teams that are more bought into their head coach, and the Texans are with D'Amico Ryans, and that alone will pull this team a long way and enable the Texans to make a run the rest of the season and the playoffs. And C.J. Stroud can beat you in a multitude of ways, and he's no stranger to winning big games. Number 2, this Texans defense. I'm an old school football guy. Do I love an explosive offense full of fireworks, big passes, electrifying plays? Absolutely. It's wildly entertaining. But there's nothing that I love more than a real physical, hard-hitting, nasty, smash-mouth defense. And that's what the Houston Texans have. I mean, they're throwing Will Anderson at you. They're throwing Danielle Hunter at you. They're throwing Azeez Al-Shaair at you. They're throwing Derek Stingley Jr. at you. Jalen Petrie. This defense is absolutely stacked. It's one of the best defenses in the NFL. I love watching them play. And they have the stats to back it up as well. Over the last 3 games, this Texans defense has a 10.91% sack rate. That's one of the best sack rates in the NFL during that stretch. They also lead the league in opponent yards per game with 265.7 yards per game of Texans opponents. And this Texans defense is also top 5 in rushing and passing defense. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants any part of that. And even though this is a dome team, and I take that into consideration because historically those teams are not great with going up north and playing teams in the cold and in the elements, but when you have a defense that nasty, it can just expand your ceiling as a team. And even though you are a dome team, because of that identity as a defensive team, you can go up north and win those cold, gritty games. I mean, it is no coincidence that the Texans went up to Arrowhead and almost beat the Chiefs last year. They smacked the Chiefs around defensively, and I think they can do it again this Sunday. And of course, what does your remaining schedule look like? I want to do a little breakdown of all 3 front runners in the AFC South when it comes to their remaining schedules, as it's really interesting what you're going to see here. Let's start with the Jags. The Jags this weekend, they host the Colts. Then they host the Jets. I think they can win that game. They travel to Denver. Not great. Then they face the Colts at Lucas Oil. That's a pivotal game for the AFC South race. And then they host the Titans, which, let's face it, Week 18, that game will be a win for the Jags. Now let's talk Colts. This weekend, of course, they travel to Jacksonville to play the Jags. And then they go to Seattle. That's a tough game for the Colts. And then they host the 49ers, another really tough game. Then, of course, there's that matchup with the Jags at home. And then this one is huge. This could be for the division. Traveling to Houston to play the Texans. That's the Week 18 matchup for the Colts. And then those Texans. And here's where it gets fascinating. They go to Kansas City this weekend, Sunday Night Football, to play the Chiefs. And then they host the Cardinals. And then they host the Raiders. And then they go on the road to play the Chargers. And then there's that Week 18 matchup with the Colts. So when I look at all 3 of those schedules here, the Texans by far have the easiest schedule remaining in the AFC South. I mean, just having the break of playing the Cardinals and the Raiders, 2 of the worst teams in the NFL. They have those games at home. And yes, they have a road matchup against the Chargers. I mean, that is not a daunting road environment at all by any means. And let's face it, that Chargers team is banged up. If this was the Chargers team from preseason or September, I think it's a little bit more daunting of a matchup for the Texans. But I think the Texans win that game too. And I even love the Texans going to Arrowhead this weekend. Because of their defense alone, I think that they're going to give KC fits on offense. I think they win this game. I think it's very possible that the Texans don't lose another game remaining this season. The Colts, just the way that they've been playing, they seem to be regressing from where they were in September and October, and that schedule is tough. Going on the road to Seattle, I don't like them winning that game. And even facing the Niners at home, I mean, Robert Saleh has that defense playing out of its mind right now. I wouldn't want any part of that. And then still playing two of their best division opponents in 3 games remaining this season. Playing the Jags twice, the Texans once. I don't love that for the Colts. And then I think that the Jags are the biggest threats for the Texans here. I mean, it's big that they have the Jets next week. I think they win that. I don't think they go up to Denver and get a win. Very few teams are capable of doing that this year. Having the Colts, the Titans, I think they can win both of those games. But to me, the Jaguars are too up and down. Right? They're too up and down. You still have a first-year head coach in Liam Cohen. Trevor Lawrence is way more inconsistent than C.J. Stroud. And the Jags overall are just a more inconsistent team than the Texans. And so when you assess this overall situation, I think it looks very favorable for the Texans to win this division. And the situation is very resemblant of what happens with the Bills and Dolphins in the AFC East back in 2023. Even though the Bills weren't leading the division at the beginning of December, you could tell just based on their remaining schedule and their capabilities lined up with the Dolphins' capabilities that they're going to win the division. You could see it coming from a mile away, and I see it with the Texans. They are just a better team than both the Colts and the Jaguars. They have a better trajectory than both of those teams right now, and out of the 3 remaining schedules, they have the easiest schedule remaining out of the 3. I want to touch on the Vegas odds a little bit here, though, provided by FanDuel, because even though I rely on Vegas odds a lot for my projections, because there's very few times that Vegas is actually wrong, sometimes I think that Vegas can be a little slow when it comes to catching up to trends. Right now, Vegas still favors the Colts to win the AFC South at plus 135, and then they have the Jags at second at plus 140, and then a drop down of the Texans at plus 320. I think after this weekend, especially if the Texans go into KC and win, I think that those odds will drastically change and Vegas will finally catch up. But I figured that Vegas would be a bit quicker to the Texans' party here. I was surprised to see them having the Texans still sitting down at number 3, especially after going into Lucas Oil and beating the Colts this past weekend. I thought that game was an absolute statement for the Texans. Evidently, not as many people are putting as much emphasis on it, but it definitely caught my eye, as did the Thursday night win over the Bills. I love the situation for the Texans right now. You can have a slow start to the season, but it's all about how you position yourself in December. And I think it's huge that C.J. Stroud and Jalen Petrie came back this weekend. The Texans are getting healthy. They're building momentum at the right time. And they have a favorable schedule. 3 things that align with and lead to a formidable playoff run. And that I think will ultimately lead to the Texans winning the AFC South this year. Let me know what y'all think about this take in the comment section below. Thank y'all for watching. Have a great day.